tell people to go to the channel, and then they should see the live stream there.
Just tell them, this is what you just said, just go to the channel, YouTube channel?
Yeah, the primary channel.
I mean, what do you want me to tell them exactly so they don't?
The main homepage.
Go to the main homepage for YouTube, and it should be
No, on your page, your channel.
on my channel.
Yeah.
Can't just refresh.
No, because I had to change the key name, and then once I stop it and to switch it out, I had to switch everything to a different setup, unfortunately. Do you see it?
Am I supposed to go somewhere?
No. Is that your? What is that the other one?
You should see it. Yeah. So what I'm saying, it's a difference. It's as if it's a different video. Yeah, see, she's got it.
Okay, cool. So we're back on. All right, you guys, we're almost ready to go here. My dad's going to get rolling. You can hear us now. Just go to my page, and all should be good. Thanks for being so patient, you guys. Like I said, we're trying out a new system for actually live streaming from our actual school, so people could actually take classes from distance. But that should be cool for you guys down the road. But we're trying to work it out right now. Okay, Dad, you're good?
Okay. Well, do we have audio and everything? Somebody could say, hell yes.
Yeah, that's good. It's all good.
Okay.
Yep, I heard you, Dad.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, I put a little bit of, I'm assuming I've got audio to you people. What I used is an old sheet of an illustration board that was once made by Crescent called Lintex. Obviously has a linen texture. Was made specifically for acrylic. I'm using gouache on it. Doesn't seem to make any difference. I had about 10 sheets of this left, so I've been playing around with it. I get fairly good results with it. I'm going to, this scene is the Ardennes in 1944. A peaceful moment in a war. I thought it was kind of poetic. The tank was really cool. I added some barbed wire leading into the thing. There's lots of snow and 3 soldiers who are very cold and a pup tent and a small fire, which would not actually have been a good idea to do, but we're going to go with it anyway because it makes for a better picture and it animates the scene a little bit. Nothing like a little curl of smoke to give things a little personality. I started out with a little bit of dark in here just to get a feeling for this, and I'm going to add a little bit of white. So I'm going to try to establish where the top and the bottom of the painting are going to be value-wise. And we'll see if we can get a little bit of this done here real quick and get the whole thing rolling along. So it's always a good idea to get these, your darkest dark and your lightest light. I don't have the darkest dark just yet, but it'll be forthcoming in just a minute or two. So the white that I'm using is a substance called Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's a great name. Works really good. I find it works with gouache just as if it was intended to, and it's a little bit more opaque. It's got a little bit more substance to it. I'm keeping it kind of thin right now just to get us rolling here. So let's put a little bit out into here too, and I'm gonna be mixing some other colors in with this so that it isn't a raw white like that first dose, because I was trying to identify where the brightest color was going, not the brightest, but the lightest value was going to be. I'm the oldest bird in this school, so I've been around the fence a few times and have done almost every kind of illustration imaginable, but conceptual stuff is my favorite thing to do. Let's see here. Okay. Trying to remember where your lines are and what means what in this. Sometimes is a little bit confusing. Pencil drawings they don't tell you much by themselves. Okay. So I'm going to have to get a bigger brush for blasting in this white when I get down to covering some serious areas. I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, you guys, the Dr. Martens works the same way. You can reactivate it. It's a little stronger white than the normal white, permanent white that you get from gouache. Gouache whites are pretty weak. They're kind of almost like zinc white in oil.
Okay.
The board, you just stained the board, right, with just a nice wash?
Yes, what I did is in order to save us a little bit of time so we could get right down to business on this, I wetted the board completely with clear water and a large brush, got it kind of sopping wet, and then I mixed up some gouache and started brushing it on to get something similar to the little comp that which I'm presuming you guys saw, but maybe you didn't. I'll show it to you in just a few minutes once I get a little bit of this done. I want to get enough in here where we can see what we're doing. This is going to look like pretty much like hell for quite a while. So you just have to go through the motions. One of the things that I've told the people in my classes is about gouache is that don't panic with it, because the tendency is, like, if you see a little bit of daylight coming through this, you get all wired up and you start painting back into it right away. And what you want to do is just work in layers, get it covered first. And most of the time with gouache, you want to let it dry after you've done something before you make any rash decisions to completely redo an area. Because when you go back into the wet stuff, you just keep adding water, you keep adding paint. It just goes from bad to worse. So you just let it dry for a minute. You can find out where you really are on it. It's the best advice I can give you with gouache. Gouache is a terrific medium. Really enjoy it. I've worked with it for a number of years and gotten some really good results with it. It's a little temperamental at first. You usually, the biggest problems beginners have with it is that they want something that will flow nicely, so they don't put enough water in it, and so it doesn't. And then they want something to be opaque, and they put too much water in it, and so it isn't. And that usually is the way the thing kind of develops. So I'm going to take this.
So someone was asking if you're using reference, and you obviously are. But
yeah, yeah, I am using reference. I make up a great deal of my stuff. The soldiers, the pup tent, the barbed wire, all of that stuff was just invented and added in. But I found a nice piece of reference on the tank and the buildings, and so I said, why re-engineer it? You know, I did draw it by hand, so I didn't trace it. If that means anything to anyone. So what I'm going to do here is I'm getting I want to be able to see my barbed wire through this, so I don't want to get real opaque real fast here, or I won't be able to see the stuff, and I'll have to, and it was kind of carefully put down, the barbed wire and the bent posts. They aren't just thrown in there to be just any which way. There's a method to my madness here. So you'll notice that once I get some water on this, that it's easier to get a covering. And so what we're doing right now is we're just trying to make great big progress real fast, so that we can start getting down to the nitty gritty on this thing. And another thing that you frequently find people doing is using too small and delicate a brush to do a big area, and that causes you all kinds of problems as well. What I'm probably going to do is, as soon as this white dries, and you don't want to try to draw on top of it or do any serious painting over the top of it until it has a chance to set up. We're just going to try to this is that early stage. I did a demo this last Tuesday, and I'm sure for quite a while people said, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This is not going to finish like I had expected. But it all turned out pretty good in the end. So you just have to be patient, and the main thing is to get things covered and to work on the big picture and don't focus on little tiny areas. This applies to pretty much any work that you might do, is to move around, get the whole picture working all at once, and don't focus on any one small area and starting to do really careful rendering up close, because if your whole idea is not functioning real well, all the careful rendering in the world is not going to make too much of a difference in the eventual outcome of the thing. It's going to not work. So once you get this white up and cooking on this thing, this scene gets just downright cold. It really, just about almost as bad as it really was.
So, Dad, your comp up there was just done with colored pencil and on
Yeah,
tone paper.
I'll show you
right?
this thing just briefly while that's kind of
Yeah.
setting up. This was done from the reference, all drawn by hand, the whole thing. And the three figures here, let me put this down almost on this surface so we can keep it in focus. These three figures and the tent was just an invention, done very quickly, the barbed wire and everything else. But we want to get some kind of a lead in to go into the picture. So it's almost like a little bit of an S that in effect that's happening on it. So the tone paper worked really well because it saves you from doing all kinds of work to try to kill the whites. Okay, I've got, I think, almost enough of this white on here to, maybe I'll put just a touch more and a couple of other areas on here just to get us rolling. I'll just put this in kind of watery and loose and thin, so we don't have to. Be so careful. Okay. One good thing about snow is you don't have to be incredibly accurate. Just as long as it's on top of stuff and not on the bottom side, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So, all right. I'm going to also want to get that smoke rising accomplished fairly soon too. We'll get some serious darks in around this piece of old armor here. Okay. I think maybe I'll just kind of let it go at that for right now. That's enough for it to. It's starting to look like a snowy picture, so that'll get some of the. And another little tool that I use frequently is a ruler to get reasonably straight lines. In fact, you can get damn straight lines with it. Okay, get in here and we get this will constitute our darkest dark pretty much. And I'm going to only use a certain amount of this. I don't want everything to be black, in other words. So typically I mix my blacks with alizarin crimson and Windsor green and gouache, and then sometimes add a little touch of orange to it to give it knock it off a little bit. But the combination of those two, if you mix them absolutely equally between the two, you will get a neutral black. In other words, it won't be cold and it won't be warm. And it works really good. I first heard about this from an old teacher named John Legata at Art Center way back, and been doing it ever since. I use it in oil as well. Same palette, which is basically, this palette consists of alizarin crimson, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow light, Windsor green, ultramarine blue, and you can toss in a couple of other colors just to, in this case I have a brilliant violet that I've added, and I have a little bit of jet black because gouache, sadly one of its weak points is that it has a hard time getting dark, and so you think you're really dark, and then you turn out to be not near as dark as you'd hope to be, and so that's what the black is for. Just add a little bit to a mixture that you're making out of the other colors, and it adds just enough dark opacity to the thing to make it work. I want to keep these darks kind of luminous in here, so I'm mixing a little bit of orange in with this mixture. And what I'm doing is I'm doing the deepest parts first, and then I'll do the parts that are not facing the light second, which is like these little areas back here where these things, I don't even want to get into terminology because you don't care, but they're basically, they have wheels on the bottom of it to keep the treads from doing something crazy that they don't want. So I'm going to go over, I'll go over the side, you go over a color that you've already gone over, it gets darker, and you go over a color you haven't touched yet, and it gets a little bit of value. So now if I were to now just go across here and across the background, they both get darker. And so that saves you, and you notice I'm working almost like, at this point in the process, almost like watercolor. And I'll gradually get more and more opaque as time wears on here, or as we wear you out, whichever the case may be. Okay, so I'm deliberately, when you've got something like battle armor, you don't want to get in there and render it like you're rendering a piece of jewelry. These things are beat to death, and it's a little bit of shadow on this wheel at the top, so the top gets kind of hidden from view. These are the tank treads at the back, so we'll get those, give them a little bit of value, get down lower on them, and they start to have some snow mixed in with them. Go back in under the front end here. There's a little bit of daylight showing through there. We'll put some not quite white in there to show the snow showing through the other side of the treads. So a lot of this stuff you don't care about, but okay. So now that's I don't want to get too much on that part, this part right here and right over here, because it's catching a little bit of light. They threw some kind of I don't know what, a coat or a blanket or something over the top of this thing here. The photography was a little less than superb considering the conditions it was shot under. I guess we're lucky to have anything at all. Okay, and this. Now I'm going to add a little bit of, as this comes out into the light here, we're going to start to add a little bit of, I'm going to add a little bit of orange to it, just to, and I'll be coming back cutting around this stuff that I'm putting in with white paint later, so it's a back and forth process, and you don't want to get I can't emphasize enough that when you're doing work in gouache, let it be. Don't keep beating on an area because it'll bite you if you do. It doesn't like to be messed with. It likes you to put it down and leave it alone for a minute. If it isn't dark enough, you can come back and go back over the top of it. If you go back over the top, people say, well, don't you drag the color up that's underneath? No, you really don't, not unless you keep pecking at it. And that's the most frequent cause of disaster in gouache is pecking at it. I mean, there are times when you will do it deliberately to get a desired effect, but you want to be sure that you're comfortable with the medium and you're doing it because you know what you're doing, not because you're trying to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And that's usually, you get panicky and you keep brushing on an area and keep beating on it, and it doesn't work. Okay, let's see. I'm going to get a really thin coating. I put a little bit of green on this, and I'm just going to very lightly go over these treads at the top here. So they'll be in shadow, but I don't want to lose my drawing that I spend a little bit of time on. Okay, and this one up here is, all right. This is a pretty dark shape as well, so this is a hatch open on the top of the tank, so which it probably wouldn't be. I mean, it'd be kind of, but it obviously was because we've got a picture of it. Okay. You can see the using this 24-inch ruler works really, really well. It's got a little metal edge on it, and you just you use your knuckles to brace it so that it rolls to your knuckles, and you just keep your thumb with some pressure on it, and it stays put, and gives you a nice solid area to run your straight lines with. I'm going to while that's still damp, I'm going to toss a couple of little additional colors in it real loosely. You got to remember that it's like, I don't know if you've ever, many of you probably have no interest in model building. In fact, probably most of you have no interest. But any of you that have built models, weathering and antiquing and getting the desired patina of chipping, rusting, painted surfaces is an art form in itself. And so what we're trying to do is to emulate that to some extent, to a great extent, as a matter of fact. Okay, I'm going to, and you'll see me dancing around here all over the place on this and not staying in any one small area. And there's a method to my madness because you have to get this thing all covered. I'll lose my drawing until it dries, then I'll be able to see it again. And I've got the reference. I got a photo, black and white photo that's tacked up. There was no color in the reference. It was just a totally black and white picture. So when it comes to color, you be on your own. Okay, let's... Notice I'm using a fairly large brush. It's probably about a number 6, something like that for this. Not a huge brush, and I'm going to just let this watercolor kind of settle. You notice it gets a little darker. Well, you will notice. I'm the one that's noticing because I'm looking at the reference photo, but it gets a little darker down next to the snow, which is really odd. I'm not sure why that is. You would expect the opposite to occur. You would expect the snow to be reflecting a lot of light up into it. Okay, so I want that to look real used. Okay, I'm going to put a little slightly different color out here. Put a little bit of alizarin crimson into it. Maybe a touch more. Go right over the doorway again, so that'll make the doorway even darker than it was before. And I'll get a little bit of, let's try a little bit of blue. A little bit of ultramarine mixed in with the soup I've been putting on here. Okay, and then I'll just come back with a little bit of water, and then it'll fuse the two colors together there. I'm going to put a little bit of this blue in here as well. You notice I'm being really, really random, and that's a skill that a person has to acquire, because the tight stuff pretty much comes automatically. Trying to be loose, not so easy. Trying to be to get loose randomness. I'm going to go back over that a couple of times, and that will soften that edge that's on there. I have a little bit of dark. I'm going to go back and hit that one more time. Okay, and we'll go back to the background color that I started putting in before. At the very end of this session, after we finally, assuming we finally get this done before we run out of time tonight, I'm going to show you a demo that I did on Tuesday, and a totally different subject. It was a fantasy Temple of the Crescent Moon, completely different subject matter, and a few things out of the sketchbook that were, the Tone sketchbook that were, just all kind. They're all inventions, and it's all different stuff. Just kind of a mixed bag. But this last semester I taught a class called Telling the Story, and everybody had a paragraph to work from, short paragraph that told the story that we were going to be depicting, and I gave them an assorted sheet of reference material that would more or less apply. They were free to use their own. Very interesting class, because that's one of the things that eventually, regardless of what you do, you will eventually be telling some kind of a story, even if it's single character development. The character itself and its appearance is telling a story of some sort. And so you have to get used to reading what this is all, what a subject is all about, and putting it all together. And then you have to learn composition and all the other things that go with it. So it's a stack of work. It's a lot of stuff to do. But that's the reason that we're here, is to do those things for people. That's what they pay you for. Help them visualize things that they can't. Okay, so we're getting some of this texture rolling here. The hardest part with any job, especially with a demo, is to get enough done where you can say, okay, I'm on the track. This thing is going where I want it to go. This is looking okay. And once you get to that point, then you can get down and start really doing some serious, decent work. But till you get to that point, we're all in doubt of ourselves, when we start out on these things. There's always there's an excellent chance with this demo or any other by anybody else that you can dump it in the dirt and really be very embarrassed with the results. So that haunts us all. But most of the time we come out of it on the far side and everything's looking okay. So get these. We're trying to stay true to the values on this thing. So we got some light that's reflecting into this, but there's very little warmth in the light. But we can, at the same time, when you get a cold scene, you can add in arbitrary warms in selected places, and it really helps the picture out. Staying cold and blue and dismal and bereft of hope through the whole thing is just doesn't necessarily give you a good painting. So the eye is screaming for a little bit of warmth against the cold. So that's what we're going to try to do here. We've got to get this whole mass of beat up buildings behind here that have been really shattered. Got to get that going soon. So you have to get everything covered in order to tell if you're anywhere close to the result that you were looking for. I mean, I have the advantage of a comp that I did. So I figured out some of the nastier problems in advance. So it's anything but cheating, because that's what you will always have to do, is to start with some rough ideas, and then you gradually improve them by adding better content, more content, refining shapes, all of those good things. Okay, get up here and get that. One of the things that I speak about a lot in class, regardless of the class, is light against dark against light against dark against light as you move through a picture. So you always want to play a lighter value against a darker and vice versa. And in the process of putting a value in something, it can also transition to slightly darker or slightly lighter, slightly warmer, slightly cooler, slightly bluer. I mean, just a variety. If you paint a telephone pole, it doesn't want to be telephone pole brown from top to bottom. It wants to go through a little bit of a transition. There's a little bit right here. It's got kind of a greenish black at the bottom there. So, and it's totally arbitrary. I mean, you can just pretty much, as long as the value's right, I could make it magenta, and it would still work with the picture. We're going to stay very tonal on this one, though, for the largest part. The only really warm spot is going to be a little spot of warmth at the campfire, and a little bit of warmth going up the smoke. I'm going to right now just whack these in, these posts, and you notice that they're leaning in all kinds of various directions in the picture. It makes it much more interesting. Okay, and over here we have one that's almost stone vertical. All right, we'll put a little bit of ghosty near shadow at the bottom of these things later, but right now I just want to get these in here because they are significant players in the composition. They, with the barbed wire, are going to lead us into the picture and around here. So they serve a very important function. This would just be a big patch of white otherwise, and that wouldn't do the job. So I'm not going to do the barbed wire yet. I think I'll probably come back with a number 2 pencil in a minute and restate those before I do the next coating of black. But I'm going to be doing some other stuff first, so it can wait. Alrighty. I'm going to get a little bit more that rusty brown color on the bottom of those. Right down at the bottom. And we can go back to a lighter value as we go up. I'm making this, it's actually this way in the reference, but let this far tank tread be just a little bit darker than the one that's nearby, just to help push the distance a little bit. Notice I come back with a thinner, watery version. It's so much easier than rendering all of these little delicate transitions. It's just a different school of thought for how to do this. Jeff, he likes tiles for everything, does it beautifully. It's always seemed to me like a lot of hard work. And so I kind of chicken out and do it my own way. But when all is said and done for all of us, regardless of the style we paint in, the finished result is the only thing that really matters. Nobody really cares unless they're trying to copy your style exactly. They don't really care how you got there. It's largely unimportant. Okay, we'll put a little bit of snow on top of this. This is actually as scenes go, this is one of the easier things to do. It's got limited color. It's mostly a value exercise. If you get the values right, everything's going to be pretty good. Limited chroma. There's not a whole lot of really exciting color going on in the thing. It's going to be my job to add a little bit to keep you from dying of boredom.
When you're choosing the direction of a paint stroke, I know that's kind of a loaded question. It's a tough one. Has a lot to do for me with what you choose before that. How they cumulatively build up. I mean, what do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I'm not really sure that it's one of those things like say, why do you sign your name the way you do?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, generally speaking, with the direction of the strokes, you usually want to follow the form. That's kind of an old saw that everybody leans on. But at the same time, you want to come back. I like to do a series of strokes in a given area that crisscross across each other so that we don't get and so it stops looking like you painted your bedroom wall with latex. There's no indication of any. I find one of the most important things with color areas is, like I said, following the form is quite important. The other thing is the edges of your strokes. That is really where it meets the road.
Everyone's thanking you for doing this, by the way.
Well, that's nice. I appreciate that. It's kind of like a busman's holiday. If I get done with all of my paying jobs during the day, what do I do at night sitting on the sofa? Draw. It's crazy. But, you either love this thing that much or you're not going to be very good at it. And I wasn't born good at this. This almost no one is. There's 2 or 3 people you meet on the way up that are disgustingly good right out of the box. But most of us have to work at it hard and do a lot of crummy work first. Handled very badly, executed poorly, before you get to the point where you can start having fun. Jeff and I went to Italy a few years back. It was a group of people, and there were some students, and we were lumped in with a bunch of tourists, and it was a crazy deal. But I had been plein air painting for quite a few years at that point, maybe 5 or 6 years, outdoors. And this was, and I was probably 50 something, I don't know. It was the first time that I could actually go out, sit down, paint something. Because as a student and as a young guy, I had fantasies and dreams of of things in my head that I wanted to paint that I could not accomplish. And this was the first time that I was able to actually say, it looks like I had what I had in mind. It's amazing. Finally I was having fun. And it wasn't like I had done any good jobs before that. But, painting outdoors with flies buzzing around your head and wind blowing things and easel tipping over and all the other good stuff that goes with outdoor painting. To say you actually had fun at it, that was a big event-changing deal. But anyway, I wish I could give you a better answer on the direction of the brush strokes. They probably, oh gosh, the most important. I don't know how important they really are. But their edges are deadly important. The actual the cutout shape that you're depicting with your brush stroke, the way it begins and ends, how soft or hard the edges are, those are the things that really count for a great deal. And the brush stroke wants to look like, if you see, I'm just kind of dancing along on this thing, not really painting desperately careful, but at the same time I'm being very careful. But it's painting loose is not the easiest thing in the world to do. It's a real challenge. In fact, you have to be able to paint tight before you can paint loose. So there you go. Just a couple of little quick strokes there. I get a little bit of light on this pup tent that's back here. Those. Okay, and then on top, these are supposed to be, I saw another photograph that I don't even remember where I saw it, but it was logs with snow on top of them that the soldiers had piled up to make a little bit of a windbreak, I guess, and to keep the wind from blowing their fire out and something like that. Okay, I'm gonna hit some quickie strokes across there to get the, it'll look really crummy for a little while. By the way, the tape around the outside, when you tape off your work, illustration board is pretty sensitive stuff, and you can tear it when you pull the tape off. For that reason, I just lightly rub it down with my fingers and only burnish the inside quarter of an inch, right where it meets the actual paint. You'll see what I'm doing here is I'm going through these posts that I just got done drawing, and I'm just gonna, and you say that looks really sloppy, but it'll dry out just fine. And if it doesn't, I'll go over it. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to take a little bit of, I'm going to start mixing a little bit more white with my colors as I go along here. That will make them more opaque. And I'm going to start with, let's start with this wall back here. So we got kind of a warm, slightly reddish gray. And I'm going to, you'll see what I'm doing there is indicating the surface that's underneath. In other words, it's made out of bricks and things. So I'm doing just random strokes, and I'm going to start shifting the color a little bit at this point. Don't want it all one color. So I've added a little orange to it. And I'm going to continue that process of doing different things. I added a little bit of alizarin crimson to it here. I got following my designed smoke. I just did that smoke. That smoke took all of 4.5 seconds to draw. It was just a crazy thing, that just a series of random shapes that go out and it just dissipates up into the top. And I'm not bragging about it. I'm just saying that I've been doing random for so long that it just random comes naturally to me. So I don't. It's something that you should practice on, just on the cheapest, dumbest paper that you can, and practice drawing random lines where you don't repeat the same shape twice. It'll really be an exercise that you will learn from. You can do that I do a lot of my preliminary lines, my preliminary drawings, that is, on lined school paper, pads of school paper. That it's a great, because you can't ruin it. So, and if you don't like what happens on it, you just throw it away. You know, there's none of your heart and soul's in it. You work in a really nice, expensive sketchbook, and you're going to get really tense. So you want to get used to just making stuff up and taking chances on some cheap paper. Sounds really like a stupid. Is that the best you can do, Bob? Is that the best you can come up with for advice? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty is. Yeah. Okay, let's put a little that same color on that. Okay, down here behind this, I want this to get just a little bit. I think a little bit lighter, I think, is going to be the choice. I'm going to have to be careful here painting around these soldiers' helmets. I've gotten to the point where World War II has always fascinated me, but I don't really like drawing battle scenes at all. I'm interested in I like the equipment. I like hardware, period. I mean, I'm just a hardware lover. And, you know, spaceships, robots, mechs, anything, you know, it's armored suits, anything like that appeals to me. And tanks and trucks and things are just another example. Let's see. Sounds like we're in the train yard, doesn't it? Boy, doesn't it. Passenger trains. Commuter trains. Okay, so you get a little. This is what I was talking to you about, changing the chroma and the value as we go down. Working with a really limited palette like this helps a lot too, because you start getting burnt umber and burnt sienna and raw sienna and yellow ochre and all these things going on, and you can mix all of those with this limited palette, and keeps you out of a lot of trouble because everything has to go together because it's made out of the same colors. So you save yourself a lot of grief. Get a little bit more. If you guys want to know about anything that's going on here, don't hesitate to ask. I'm assuming that it's interesting enough to ask a question about. We'll cross that bridge later.
That's looking good. I like the feel of it right now.
No, it'll happen, but it never can happen fast enough. And like I was saying in class the other day when I was doing the demo, an old friend of mine who was an excellent illustrator said the only fun is the last 10 minutes of the painting. So, and I totally agree. It's absolutely where you finally can let out your breath and sort of enjoy it for a bit. Go back here and I'll hit some of these little spots where I painted over the top. You can see they're dominant. The darks are dominant, so it's really easy to cover up anything that was.
So what palette are you using right now?
This light gray, you mean?
No, just what palette of colors?
Oh, alizarin crimson, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, pale or light, either one. Windsor green, ultramarine blue, and I got jet black, and I got a little bit of violet on here too. I haven't used it thus far, but I may. See if that's too light for that. That's probably.
So you're using kind of a warm cool palette, but you don't have really a.
Oh, it's definitely a warm cool palette. Absolutely, yeah. This is a tonal experiment, so it's not going to be screaming with color. I'll have to add any color arbitrarily that I choose to include here. But it's mainly a value study problem. That's what we're really after here. It's just getting the values right. But you can mix burnt sienna with cadmium orange, alizarin crimson, and just a touch of Windsor green will give you burnt sienna. And by varying the mixtures of those three components, you can get all kinds of burnt siennas that run the full gamut. You can even add a little yellow in it if you choose. I think that. Okay. Let's see down there at the far end what's going on. Yeah, it's unfortunately with this building process that you don't get to appreciate the real excitement of the picture until you get much of this heavy lifting work done, and then you start cleaning up edges and things, and it starts looking just a whole lot nicer. Okay, let's see if that's probably just a touch light, but it'll dry lighter than it is, so I can probably err on the side of a little too dark and probably be in good shape.
Yeah, one someone was asking about a couple times here. Let me see here if I can find having trouble with gouache in gradients in large areas like skies.
The secret is a brush about that big.
About the size of a wall brush.
Yeah, and to wet the entire area, work with it flat on a surface, not on a slope like this. And that's one of the reasons that I did it in advance, because I knew that because of the constraints of the position of the camera that covers all of this madness, you can't you can't get everything would run to the bottom. So you need a flat surface, and you need to tape it off and then wet it carefully with clear, clean water. And this board, this Lintex, is not the most receiving board for water. It has a tendency to dry out fairly quickly. And if you want to get really good results with wet into wet, you want to work with a rag finish illustration board. And so the best illustration board you can get is just barely good enough these days. There used to be a lot better choices around. You can paint with gouache on canvas. You can paint on gesso, which there's a number of illustrators, most notable of which is probably David Grove. And if you don't, he's not around anymore, but if you bother to look at his work, you'll see gouache and gesso at its finest hour. He really was excellent at it. I've done a few jobs, more than a few actually, in the past, using that same approach, and it is it's great fun. Gesso's a wonderful surface, but it absolutely refuses to absorb anything. So except stains, it seems to like stains. Certain, like alizarin crimson and Windsor green, are staining colors, and they will get into the gesso and want to stay there when you put them on. So it's just one of those things of just practicing and getting good at the subtleties. You notice I've almost have an army olive drab kind of color cooking here at this point, but it's a long ways away from anything you would call olive green. It's more like sage green. more like dried tea leaves or something. You know, it's a real real subtle kind of color. But that's the chroma in any paint quickly goes away. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a battle. It could just be in your car parked downtown. You can watch the color disappear over a couple of years and fade away. And the same thing happens in war, except at an accelerated pace. So got mud and dust and grime. They never get washed. It's all kinds of good, yummy stuff that you can have a lot of fun. You see I'm painting around the snow here that I put in earlier. And I'm being pretty careful with this because I don't want to. These are just little nicks in the snow where it didn't quite stick, or it's melted off. Either way. Okay, so and all these colors here are still in the process of trying to dry. So what I want to do is put them on there in what I think is roughly a good color and value choice, and I'll let it dry and see where it goes. And I have a pretty good instinct for it at this point, but don't make any brash claims that, hey, I really am an old professional and I know exactly where that's going to go. No, it doesn't work that way. Just you get better at guessing, that's all. Okay, let's see. We got some funny little shapes that are on there. I got to get a little bit. You got to watch that you don't get too much paint and kind of spin the brush like that to get it to go to a point. And you bet. I use these Robert Simmons white sable. It's a synthetic brush, and they're not expensive. They don't last a long time. You burn through them pretty fast, but you know they're like a brush this size is maybe, I don't know, $8, and it'll last for quite a while. If I get a Winsor Newton sable, it'll just be many times that amount. You know, like 6 times that much or more. Okay, let's see. We got a couple of little dark patches underneath this. Again, I'm kind of following the direction of the trying to answer Jeff's question, you know, about why do you go certain directions with the brush strokes. And you'll notice that, see, the brush is like a flat blade here to put these things down. I'm not working with a pointed shape to do this, and then I can turn it on its edge and I can get little skinny lines with that edge, and I can get really wide ones with this. So after a while, you will learn to utilize your brush. And I'm keeping a really light touch on it as well. And I can, if I want to wipe most of the paint off, then you can get little dry streaky things that are really interesting. That it's a really light touch. So that's kind of you may not even be able to see what I'm doing here. I don't know what after all, YouTube is YouTube. You know, it's just a little bitty picture and you blow it up to screen size and it goes to pieces on you. So you're probably gonna, maybe Eric can zoom in on it at some point and give you a little better shot at what's really going on. I'm adding a couple of little, and so I'm going to be moving all over this thing. You'll see me spending a little bit more time on the tank right now, but I will quickly move away from that and get some of the other stuff rolling. We got to get the soldiers, get a little bit of life into them. We got to get that smoke going up. Got to get the rest of the buildings done. Let's see. But I like to, with gouache paint, I like to kind of back into my paintings. So you won't see the ultimate brightest bright, darkest dark until a little bit later. I'll get close, but I don't usually get it nailed right out of the box. And I guess maybe it's because maybe I'm just not smart enough to know where right is on the thing, Because, they don't give out PhDs in this stuff. We're all kind of guessing a good share of the time. Okay. A few more some ugly stuff on the bottom of that. So I'll just smear it with my finger a little bit. This linen-y texture is kind of nice. It'll allow you to catch. Those are little. You'll see I go back and forth a few times with that, and I'm gradually getting a little. I've got almost no contact between the brush and the surface.
One guy's asking, what level do you typically complete a drawing before you add paint? But I mean, it's different for each person, really.
Well, you can see what I've got here, and that's about as far as I ever go. I mean, unless if I was doing a medical illustration, which God forbid, it doesn't need to be that. What you need is your verticals. If they need to be vertical, need to be vertical. You don't want more pencil lines than you can. A lot of them, what you're going to do is you're going to start painting and cover them right up. And so start with little color sketches and just gradually give yourself more complicated assignments and that have more information in them. And another trick that you can use is to do your drawing on a very good piece of tracing paper of some kind, like a vellum. Paint your background. I painted the background first, and then I flipped this drawing down over the top. Did this drawing with a transfer sheet in between, a carbon transfer sheet in between. And then I folded it up out of the way. And in the case of this demo, I got rid of it and didn't bring it along. So, because you can't do that in a demo. But what you can do is if you start to lose your drawing, you can flip the drawing back down. It's taped in place with your board, so it can't move around. And you just bring it down, tape the corners down, slip the transfer sheet underneath, and retrace the lines that have disappeared. So it's a really good piece of advice, and it works very, very well. And then your drawing, you don't have to worry about trying to get your drawing lined back up with your painting because it's already lined up. Okay, get a little bit. Okay, this color down here I'm not that happy with, so I think I'm gonna. By the way, this is a super cheap brush. You get these at places that sell home improvement stuff. They're just little dumb brushes. They cost like $1.98 or something like that, and so they're really super cheap. And they do a really good job of putting the water down and getting your initial washes in place. I mean, they're really good. It does a super job. Okay. And I'm going to get a little bit of that olive drab over the rest of that wheel. Let's get a little bit, stop talking about doing this and start doing it. They're wearing their heavy winter coats here, which I don't think they were all that heavy or all that good. But I'm going to go real thin on this so that I don't, and they had a little thing underneath their helmet which kept their ears from freezing, so kind of sneaks up underneath there. But I don't need to get a lot of detail in these guys. Their silhouettes are going to carry the day. That's what and they have these long coats on. Baggy pants tucked into the tops of their boots. They're really war if you're not showing all of the blood and thunder with it. There's some wonderfully atmospheric and intoxicatingly moody things that happen during these conflicts when the bullets aren't flying that are really fascinating to paint. For me, anyway. Maybe not so much for you guys, but you never know. I mean, there's really not much.
One guy said, "Why are you so interested in war stuff?" But you've always been interested in that.
Because a day at the parking lot just doesn't have much mood.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's a parking lot at Walmart just isn't that a big a deal. There and it's kind of like would the video games be any fun if you weren't shooting somebody? It's and I don't like the shooting part. I like the hardware part, and I like the mood and the lighting that's going on, and
the patinas and all that.
I mean, it could just as easily be a brush fire or a hurricane. But they're the things that have more meat on the bone, so to speak. There's more stuff happening. Beautiful sunny days, they're great. You go out and plein air paint those, but I don't make a habit of painting war all the time. That's not. I guess if I like the classic stories, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Little Red Riding Hood, Dracula, the same things that I guess most everybody's interested in. But this is just like all this is it's a quiet moment. This could just as easily be a farm tractor in the snow. It wouldn't make any difference. It's just that this, the shapes are interesting. They're intriguing to me. That's about it. It's not. I want to stay as far. I was a Navy combat artist, and I had to go out on those trips periodically. But like most people, I didn't see anything violent at all. And this was during the Vietnam era. And so I spent most of my time on aircraft carriers and things, and I always liked airplanes a lot too. So that turned out to be a pretty easy thing to do. I didn't have to work too hard at. That's a long train there, isn't it? Freight train, auto racks, I think. Okay.
Yeah, it's looking really good. I like the effect right now. It's looking great.
When we get this little campfire going, I think it'll take on a little toastier, less malignant look, than it. Okay, just dabbling in a little bit of darks in there to make sure we get this shadow underneath that edge convincing. Yeah, this could this scene could just as easily be a truck stop in midwinter, and it would have just about as much interest in it, but somehow painting of a large truck doesn't seem to tell much of a story as well. But it could, I guess. Okay, let's see now. We got to get a little darker value in here, so in keeping with what I was saying earlier about darks against lights, lights against darks. going to have to go in here and preserve the silhouette of this fellow. Kind of messed up his helmet a little bit there. I'll have to.
Yeah, this particular painting is very similar to ones you did on the tech painting online in the master classes. I mean, didn't you do is that where you did the mech? If I recall correctly.
Let me see. I
that was-
did a my father was in World War II was an engineer, and their job was to clear roads, build bridges, find drinking water, all that kind of good stuff. And he was I did a painting in one of the classes of a city in France called Saint-Lô. And it was lamentably the first victim of a carpet bombing in the course of war, and pretty much wiped the place out. But even so I painted this. It's a big convoy of things moving through the city, lots of dust and everything. It's a very moody piece, and that was where my dad was stuck for a long time, trying to get that place whipped into shape. And then everybody had to move through at the same time, so to go on to the eastern regions that they were working towards. But anyway, the shapes and the compositions, and I mean, even in the wake of a tornado, there's incredibly interesting shapes that get created with things, and I don't know. I've always been fascinated by random design that occurs in the course of something outside of human intervention. Okay, let's see. We got just touch those lightly with my finger to see if I can soften them just a touch. Okay. Now let's put some of this dark just in the. We'll leave a little bit of the old color right at the edge, so that'll be the door jamb, so that we. It's going to catch a little bit of light. We don't want to kill it all. Okay, get the rest of this dark in here. I'm going to have to get that smoke rolling here real soon. Okay. Okay, let's trounce back into get a little bit of color into this building back in here, just so we don't get too monochromatic and too cool. I want to get a little bit of a little bit of warmth into the picture somehow. So we'll go to some semblance of the brick color. We had one of the storytelling assignments was I don't know if you're familiar with Saving Private Ryan, but it was the assignment for that week, and I ended up actually just doing a demo of it rather than and it was a step-by-step to show how the process worked, but it was a view from above, three-point perspective above there was a fellow who was ostensibly going to be a sniper, but But nothing was happening in the picture except a tank was moving, a German tank below, and there's a lot of exaggerated three-point perspective, and it came out really nice. It was it's basically just like becoming a film director, and where do I want to move my camera, and how do I want to look at this thing? How do I want to position it? How much perspective do I want to see? That kind of thing. So it was a really, really fun. I didn't bring it along, but tonight. Okay, let's see now. This. So now what I'm doing is you do these little horizontal lines across here, like this. I'll show you what I'm talking about, at random spacings and random thicknesses. They don't even need to be absolutely parallel. And then you take a little bit of the same color and you just come back in and you work in between them. And they become really complicated. And you almost can imagine that you're looking at lots of little individual bricks.
Shane said you're doing great.
Who said?
Shane.
That's always nice to hear. Okay, let's see. I put a little bit of a vague cast of pink in the sky here. It's actually, it's mostly cadmium orange, just thinned out after I painted the overall sky with a gradation of gray. And it adds a little bit of subtle warmth. It's almost like it's either really late in the day or really early in the morning. And you don't have any idea which it is. Doesn't matter. Okay, the trickiest part is gonna be doing the smoke, and I lost some sleep trying to figure out how I was going to do that, because I typically do that when I paint the sky. I will transfer down a little bit, transfer the smoke down first, paint the sky, and then put that in while it's still wet, so it goes wet into wet. Diffuses very nicely that way, but I don't have the luxury of that today, so. We're going to have to wing it and see what we can pull off with this. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of yellow at the bottom of where the fire is going to be. Well, it's amazing how a little touch of color means something after you've been deprived of it. Okay, and then we'll mix ourselves up a little bit of this is going to be very, very tricky. Okay. I'm going to paint that back into so I painted the warm down below, and then you paint the dull warm gray above. And now we'll cool it way down. And before that dries up, I will run this color into it that's here. I'm doing this in kind of little stages as I roll up the smoke. If I can pull this off, it'll be a major coup. Okay, and we'll get a little bit lighter still up in here. Okay. That was a cheap blending technique there, using your finger. Okay. Use a little bit of, just a little bit of water around the edge here. I'll blot that a little bit. I don't want to leave watermarks in the sky or anything like that. We'll just this is another little technique that works pretty good, which is where you take a nice new brush and just kind of vandalize it, you know, a little bit. Okay, we'll see if that does the job. Got a little water down here, but that won't hurt anything. Okay, let's while that's settling down, we'll go up here on this roof and get a little bit of a slightly different color. I'm probably going to go back and modify. Whoops, that was sloppy. Sorry about that. I can fix that easily, but that's what happens when you're hurrying. Okay. We're just going to make that little glitch a part of the plan. Okay. Let's see. Get a little cooler color in there, I think. I want a little bit of darkness behind this guy so that they can read against one another without too much difficulty. Let's see. A little tent pole poking out at the far end of the tent as well. I'm gonna soften this smoke just a little bit right in there. Just with a little bit of water on the edge. It's got to be kind of soft and delicate with it. Okay. See if I can get a few little hot embers going up out of the fire there. Looks like picking a tiny detail to a little early, but it'll We got to get something sort of finished here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now. Okay, let's see, we got okay. A little more shadowy darks underneath that. Yeah, its smoke looks okay as it's drying out up there. I'm gonna take some of this white board, white tape off, rather. Reveal the white, I should say, and see how it, because when you're looking at it against this manila yellow, it has a different look than it does against white. So I won't be taking this stuff off because we're not done working with that area, but we'll take it down to a point where it's safe. We'll start to get a little better idea of just how dark that sky is compared to the white of the snow. Quite a bit darker than it actually looked a minute ago. So that helps me out too, because now I can start to see where I'm at value-wise and what needs help and what doesn't. Obviously, the snow needs an enormous amount of work, but okay, I'm gonna see if we can get the rest of the snow. Go into a little smaller brush here. That snow is a little bit warmer than it probably should be, but it'll be okay. can add a little bit of alizarin to it, a little bit of cool red, because alizarin is a very cool red. And the reason for this palette for the cadmium orange, that's a major tool for getting ourselves a cadmium red out of the alizarin crimson, which it doesn't want to be warm like that. You can't totally duplicate a cadmium red medium with this mixture, but you can come pretty close, and you come close via comparisons. And so the fact that you've got other colors that don't have the high chroma, although it's plenty high enough, that you're maybe looking for the you can fake the eye into believing that the red that it's seeing is actually pretty bright by putting a duller color next to it. So it's a cheap trick, but it works. Okay, and see, is there this needs white on it too to complete that. Get in here and start finessing this snow. Is nobody asking any questions?
Yeah, I'm just kind of reading through them
Or
some of them
just
are
looking for
funny.
things that are...
And I'm letting you paint a little bit because I know how crazy it can be when you're trying to.
Yeah, I'm made out of sterner stuff than that.
No, I know. A lot of the questions are particular to different aspects of the online and stuff that's going on.
Like the demo I did when the drain backed up
Oh yeah, that was a treat.
in school. That was a just kept painting. Just kept painting. Okay, a few little soft drags across here can give you the effect of blowing snow. So let's go back in and keep going with this. I want to get some okay, it's a little peekaboo spot through there where you're seeing. Okay, let's get this. What we're going to do is we're trying to get all of the really important stuff framed. In other words, around these soldiers, the campfire, the tent itself.
Yeah, what will you do? Some guy wants to know what you'll do with the painting when it's done.
Good question.
Probably,
It goes. It definitely goes in my. I'll shoot it and it'll go into my iPad and my portfolio of stuff. That is amazingly germane. Occasionally, I sell comps and things. Usually, the more finished paintings. Usually nobody, I mean, artists are a pretty poor crowd, so generally speaking, so they usually aren't in the market for these things. And you got a pretty limited market for shots of the Ardennes in 1944. It's but somebody out there would buy it. Believe me. There are people that are historical enthusiasts and things, you know. And like I say, you know, you're not really painting war, you're just painting a piece of history. This could just as easily be Valley Forge with George Washington. It's just a little moment, little time capsule moment in time.
Yeah, these remind me a lot of the ones you did when I was a kid. You're always working on different...
Well, plus I started out in aerospace, and aerospace for the largest part is military. You know, and so, you know, I spent about 10 years doing airplanes and things that didn't exist yet.
One guy was asking you what, in your free time, what do you like to draw most? I mean, what if you had 5-minute break or some sketchbook, or what would you... I mean, it's usually, from what I've seen lately,
if I flip through my sketchbook, you'd get some idea. I mean, it's everything from, it's pirates, detectives from the film noir era, dragons.
mostly concepting stuff, visual development.
Yeah, I mean, it's just anything. You know, I mean, I change every day what I'm looking at, and I don't do the same stuff every day. I change. I just love that. I like to capture characters, mood. Oh, mood is huge. I love mood. I mean, you know, sunny days. You know, nah, there's not that much fun to paint them. You know, they're.
A couple of the guys too asked, what book would you look at if you in your free time? Like, what is your favorite books to look at, art-wise?
Art-wise,
I know it was all Prima there for a while, but
oh, you know, I mean,
that's hard. That's a
Are
hard
you
one.
talking about other artists' books?
I would
Is
say
that what
art
they're
books,
talking about?
Yeah, like probably art books, I would imagine.
Richard Schmidt, huge fan of him. Norman Rockwell, Dean Cornwell,
Yeah, the new Cornwell
Bob
book's
Kuhn.
quite nice.
You know, for animals. Gee, boy, just almost anybody, you know. And then I love I'm kind of a Star Wars addict. And so, you know, I've got a huge model collection and got lots of books by the various concept artists that have worked on that. And so, you know, that's probably the usual, you know, I guess you'd call it guy stuff, but no, I mean, witches, knights in armor, pirates, thieves, homeless people. I mean, I've done everything, you know. Everything's grist for the mill, you know. I mean, it's just there's no. I'm just fascinated by interesting lighting, interesting shapes, and you know, I mean, you can take a fire hydrant. It's the dullest thing in the world, and you light it correctly, and it's fabulous. I mean, it's just amazing. And you get it from the right angle, and much of I guess I always had an intense interest in movie making. So I kind of approach every illustration as if I were out there with a film crew and directing the thing and trying to figure out where to put the camera and which lens to use and where to put the lights and what to hide, what don't I want to see, what do I want to see, what is the center of interest. You know, that's where my interest really lies. And illustration is just a great little vehicle for it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's digital or not. Digital's great. It's fun. It's easy. If you can do gouache, you can do digital. It's not a problem. They are so similar in the way you approach things and layers and cutting into shapes and cutting around things and different layers. But unfortunately with gouache, you don't have a Control-Z key to get rid of a mistake, and you can't just control right left click to get to match a color exactly. You've got to actually mix it. So there's a lot of things. It's good training. It's great training for digital artists. It's because you if you can do this, you can do anything. Okay, so I want him like he's standing in snow. I want.
Yeah, the read's really good.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it was good.
With the once we get a few swirly shapes in here, we should start to. I guess we got an hour to go on this thing, so I think there's about a half hour's work in it, actually.
Yeah, you don't have to do
And
that.
then I can show you a couple of the other things, and everybody's wondering what I draw, and I can show you some of that because I brought a few sketchbooks along. I have a tendency to like working on the toned paper now because it gives you all the middle values, and by using some of the lighter colors from Prismacolor, you can get your darks and lights, bouncing against each other with no problem, and you don't have to fight the white of the paper, and it's really wonderful, really good. So I've been on that for a while, and I also there's the B Paper Company makes a deluxe sketchbook. They're excellent, super deluxe, great paper. Oh, and you can do watercolor on it, and as long as you don't just flood it, with water, it will turn right around and be flat as a pancake the next day. It's great. And it's the first sketchbook I've ever found that will do that. Because usually water and sketchbooks don't get along. And then I do a lot of when in my sketchbook, typically I will draw with a number 2 pencil, just a plain old, I use Dixon Ticonderoga number 2s, and they do a terrific job. They're just a great little pencil, very inexpensive. You don't have to buy any of this fancy pencils if you don't want to. You can get along without them. Let's see, I don't think I want to do too many. I'm going to do some vertical lines here on this side. I don't want to get this to become part of that. It was very important to figure out where that barrel was going to be so it didn't hook on to some part of the building. That's the kind of thing. It's extremely easy to make a mistake like that when you're positioning things. I'm using really light strokes here to simulate. Now, you'll probably, by looking at the way I do this, you'll say this is more like watercolor than gouache. And it certainly has a lot of similarities. I do a lot of watercolor, and particularly with the architectural subjects. Let's see. Put a couple of little random chunks on that. All right. And
I was asking, when you tried matching a color, what are the steps you go through to get the right color? I mean, that's always...
Boy, that's a toughie. I've got a puddle here. Basically, you guys can't see the actual palette, but it looks like it ranges from cools to warms, and I just kind of pick the spot in between, touch it, see if it's close. If it's close, I may modify it, it may be just... I try to stay in a little narrow range, and I've, frankly, unless you're a robot, you're not going to be able to. You can't duplicate the eyedropper in digital painting. You're never going to be that good. So what you have to do is develop a style and an approximation that allows you to not be that precise, so that you can, let's see, I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to do this. First, I'm going to go back up here into this blue, and I like the blue, but I don't want, if there's a little too much of it. So
Yeah, one guy was asking about the perspective. You pretty much freehand your perspective. You're not using any vanishing points. You're not doing it. I mean,
they're in my head.
yeah, because you know it so well. But if someone didn't know it, they would probably have to use some grid lines, I'd imagine.
Well, the thing I've in the last class that I just got done teaching, it was all the cheap tricks on how to steal vanishing points from photographs and other things. So you find a photograph that you really like the feel of it. Maybe a totally different subject than what you're painting. You know, it might be somebody's bedroom, and I say the perspective on it is just exactly what I was after. That's where that duplicates the camera angle that I was thinking about. So what you can do is you can just take any two parallel lines in each of the two directions, or maybe the third direction if it's 3-point, and you'll find your vanishing points for that. Then you just draw your own subject using those vanishing points and not getting any further. In other words, the part of a picture that's in perspective is usually kind of in the middle between the vanishing points. You get too close to the vanishing points, things start to get kind of crazy. So if you keep your subject matter in the same general location as that bedroom, then what you will have is you will have the inside of a medieval castle where they're drinking beer and, you know, eating the wild boar and doing whatever else and dancing and whatever else they're doing in that place, and it'll have the same perspective as that bedroom, except it'll be the year 1122 instead, you know. So learning how to use resources and combine them. If you combine any two things into the same picture that weren't in the picture together to begin with, then they have to share the same horizon line. That's a very complicated thing to try to explain here while I'm painting a snow scene, but basically something in a picture of two people standing together. There'll be something in there with lines in the paving, lines in a building behind them, something that will reveal usually where the horizon lies by taking any two parallel lines, things that seams in a sidewalk, anything that you can, a mailbox nearby, anything you care to name, you can find the horizon line. And so then by simply enlarging or reducing the two figures, they'll fit in any picture that, as long as the horizon lines coincide. So it's a neat little trick, and there are a lot of similar cheap tricks in illustration, because as an illustrator, you don't generally have all the time in the world to make something happen. You know, somebody will call you today and say, I need that all finished by Monday. Can you do it? So you got tomorrow, you know, maybe a little bit more time. I don't know where you are on the date line here, but you either got one day or you've got two. So you've got to find shortcuts for things. You can't, and I have an extensive digital library of photo reference of all manner of things, everything from people jumping over fences to forest fires, everything in between. And I got something like 20,000 photos on my iPad alone. And let's see, I want to get this, get a little bit of, just want to tie all that together with a common color. We'll leave that one alone, and we'll come in here and hit this with a little bit. Kind of careful around my smoke so that I don't mess that up. Whoops. I didn't know that had that much water in it. we got to get this, got to get our gigantic brush out here and see if we can get a little bit of what I'm after out here in the snow going on. I want to try to get this wrapped by 1/2 past. Okay, let's see. There's a whole lot of jumbled debris in this picture as well, just old lumber and stuff that's kind of laying around out there. So, okay, that stuff probably won't stay as contrasty as it is right at the moment. We'll see. Okay. This is basically just what you'd call freelance composition work here at this point. So I'm working with the S that I alluded to early in the thing, and I want it to kind of come up into there. And I'm going to come back with the whites now. See, is that the biggest brush I have? No, it is not. This is the biggest. There's the Goliath, okay. All right. I'm going to have to try to figure out what my color of my mass of snow is going to be here. See, I think I want a little tiny bit of green in it, oddly enough. Let's see. This takes not a little bit of guts when you're doing this kind of stuff. So you gotta kind of trust your instincts. That's what I'm doing right now. Okay. I think I'm going to lose all of my barbed wire, so I'm just going to, the heck with it. I'll have to just fake it. Try to remember what I did. Okay. This is really an abstract painting. It's what this boils down to out here. You don't have to try to make anything specific out of it. All you're doing is you're determining some general movement, some general shapes that will add hopefully a little interest to the piece and it's going to look really crappy until it dries, as you probably have gotten the gist of by now. I'm just going to break up these shapes a little bit with some crossed strokes. I had brought a hairdryer, but I'm not going to subject you to that. Okay. Then we'll. What has happened here is I've created some little odd shapes, which I'm just putting a little bit of color into those. Because when you start out, if you just start out trying to paint little random shapes, you can't do that. Doesn't happen. Random doesn't happen deliberately, if you know what I mean. Random has to have an element of accidental in it for it to really function. I'm going to pull this off now. And we'll get a little bit of water and wash that off, I hope. Oops. Okay. Let's get making a lot of noise anyway. Okay, that gets that stuff. I can take this off the bottom here. This hopefully, unless I'm stone wrong here, these little final strokes are the things that are going to turn this into something a little bit better. Okay, so now I've got to get my, there it is. All right. Get a little different color on that as well. This is where, once you lose your drawing, this is where having your drawing taped at the top would be a nice, convenient thing to have at your disposal. But we don't have that. So now I'm going to have to go back and use the same skill set that invented them in the first place to reinvent them. So I'm talking about the barbed wire now. The posts are still visible enough that we can pretty much repeat that. So here we got a ding, 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 ding kind of thing that's happening around here, which adds a little bit. We want to make sure they're all slightly different in thickness and angle of repose so that they feel kind of, all right. So now let's see if I do have this one drawing that I did. The one that I did in the sketchbook, so I can use that as a general guide. Now, this is where I'm going to want very little paint on the brush and a good approach is to not draw the line absolutely continuous. Let it leave little breaks in it from time. This ruler is indispensable for this, but there's still a trick to it to get the curves to come out right. And we'll put a few little barbs on these to give them a little more character. Okay, and here's one that's just kind of hooking around, does a little couple of spins, and goes off at a weird angle to there. Okay, this one is going to go from here to here. I'll slide this over just a little bit. All right, and let this kind of just bury itself in the snow. The illusion that that's happening anyway. Put a little whisper of the very light warm gray to get just some little illusion of a bit of shadow from this stuff. And with barbed wire and things like that, you don't want it to be black. Oh, it's got to be just like a light, pale, nothing kind of dove gray. Maybe it could be a slightly rusty color, but that would be the most. And over here, do something kind of weird there just to give us a little break in the pattern. It's kind of be nice to be able to see through that fence line so that it doesn't become a barrier. Got a little thick there. It's not ideal. Let's see. They had a little logo on the side of their helmet. Okay, let's see now. Got about 10 minutes left or so, 15. To wrap it up.
It's amazing how much it looks like digital. Or digital looks like gouache, you know?
Oh, I know.
It's ridiculous.
No, it's absolutely the same. I mean, it's just that the same set of rules apply to both. I mean, you got lots of extra tricks you can play, but you got a few that you can play with gouache too, that you can't quite do in digital. So it all comes out in the wash eventually. Okay. Get ourselves a little darker inside in that hole, and maybe not quite that dark. I actually did a painting of an oil drilling platform with the lights on in the night. It's out in West Texas with a thunderstorm in the distance with lightning, and went to all extremes to make it look like it was done digitally, but done with gouache. And it actually came out really cool. It was, and I learned a lot about new ways to paint in gouache by trying to make it look like digital. It was very interesting. There's some crossbreeding that can occur in this stuff. Okay. Getting close. Gotta get this guy's rifle with a little bit of color on it. Clean up that helmet shape a little bit there. That'll dry a little bit lighter, I hope. Should be okay. Okay, and then there's some more scattered lumber and stuff back here in the snow. We'll probably have to come back and retouch the snow around it to make it look right. You see, you can pick up a little bit of you can pick up a little bit of the white in your paint, but if you just move quickly and don't hit the same area again right away, it'll dry up enough where you can come back over it a second time. But if you say, no, I want that to be opaque, and you keep beating on it, it'll fight you. Okay, a little bit of color in this. Want this to look like it's coming and going in the snow there, so the word snow's over the top of part of it. See, I can skinny up that little piece of barbed wire there while I'm about it. Put a little bit. Now that the stuff is dried a little bit, I can cut across it with the white. It'll give you, it's the very same thing that you do in digital with masks, where you can go back now and you can cut across a shape and you end up with the illusion of great complexity, but it was really stupid easy to do. Okay. We gotta add a few little dots of detail around here, just a few to make it look a little bit more convincing. And this thing here, fill that in. Let's see. I'll pull the rest of this off. Whoops, hello. I'm probably not quite centered on the screen, am I? You have to tell me if I'm off. Is it okay? All right. So we're getting very, very close. I mean, you could work on it for another, and I probably will, work on it for another 3 or 4 hours later, just doing little tiny touch-up stuff to make it look perhaps a little better. That actually got a little bit too black. It's not doesn't look that good. I'm gonna have to go back over that with a little bit of red to. Okay, and there's a. These are just a few of the little tank tread details that add a little bit more verisimilitude to the whole thing. It's a $50 word.
It's a good one. One you don't hear every day.
It is, yeah. All right, and there's some little doodahs on it here. And this could be a little bit darker. It's a little cheap trick for getting a weed in the snow. Put a little thing and just kind of just pull it out a bit. Gonna get a little bit of get a little illusion of a little leafless tree in the distance there. Put a little tiny bit of green back onto this tent where the snow isn't. Okay. I'm going to mix up a little bit to do a little bit of brush line drawing here. Is what I'm going to try to do. You could also you can mix media at this point too with gouache. It doesn't have to be a religious rite painting with gouache. You can mix anything you want with it to lighten that color up a little bit. It's kind of a delicate little operation, but just dab the brush on the napkin there to get a little bit of the pigment out of it. I got to add a little snow on top of that gun barrel. Few little broken ticks along there so that that chunk on the end doesn't look too out of place. And I think that I'm going to just kind of say that's sort of done, you know,
Yeah,
without
that's awesome.
well, we could go on and keep pecking along, but you're going to lose interest, and I could give you a little.
You can go ahead.
I'll put a
and,
little extra shadow in there. What's
yeah,
that?
it looks great. I mean, you can go ahead and move on to showing some sketchbook stuff in a minute. But what I was going to tell people online, a lot of people are asking about just different videos. These are really just for entertainment. We really can't get into all the particulars of perspective lessons. If you want to do that stuff in composition, you can definitely go online to the online program. I mean, these are kind of teasers for that, but they're also for entertainment. They're all so just to get this stuff out there and let you guys know what we do. But tell your friends, maybe go online, check it out. He has some amazing compositional classes on there, very much like this, but explaining the exact procedure, giving you workbooks that go along with it, all that kind of stuff. So if you guys are interested, go on there and check it out. It's a great program. We're really proud of it. I mean, I've spent about 10 years on it now, and all these guys have done excellent work on it. So thanks you guys for tuning in. I'm going to be here, but he'll be showing you some stuff here in a minute, and you know, sketchbook stuff and everything. And then I'll be doing one in 2 weeks on gesture figure painting, which is going to be coming up in the next release of our phases. It's 20 different paintings, an hour each, 10 females, 10 males, recliners, back poses, standing poses, all that kind of stuff. So it's a good phase. So anyway, thanks for joining us. And again, I'll be here for a bit. We're just my dad's gonna show some sketchbook stuff, and thanks again, Dad, for doing it. It was awesome.
Yeah, let me get this. Oh, it's a terribly cramped space we're working in here to try to get this to all happen. You've seen this one, so we don't need to go. This is a new sketchbook, so that's the first page in it so far. I'll put this back up here where it was, about there. And I'll show. This is the one that I did on Tuesday night, which was for the Temple of the Crescent Moon. That was it. Was a totally make-believe fantasy thing, and here we have an inverted L frame in the foreground. We've got a fair amount of atmospheric scattering going back to the subject, but this framing foreground foil element tends to help focus your attention. It's just kind of a flight of fantasy, a little bit of ceremonial smoke coming from up there, and of course the moon. It was a fun little job. I did a quick drawing of it the week before, and in about an hour, just standing up there and just tear into it and see if you can make anything happen. And this was the net result of it. So, it's consider the amount of time that was spent on it. It's nothing terribly involved. This is I don't even know what's in this particular sketchbook. We'll see here. Kind of a Star Wars Jakku influence thing. All these are done from memory, not from photos. They're just, I look at things and then make them up. City on the Rim world, a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of hardware, a little bit of lightsaber. From Fury Road, was it? I think it was named, but little just that was, somebody asked me to try some pencils, and I did it in class. It was a sketchbooking class. Just some miscellaneous stuff. Creature, strange creature. This was the story illustration class where we were a lazy curl of smoke rose from the campsite some distance away. Two men were by the fire. One seemed very angry. That was the text that they had to illustrate from. So that was my test result from it. This was another story, just a rainy gray street. This was a roadhouse in the country. You can see we got a spooky character here, some hapless visitors, a couple of ideas for the staging of the whole thing. Scary Dawn of the Dead kind of deal. A Little Red Riding Hood, where you got her, the wolf, and Grandma's house all in the picture, and a road that gets you somehow to that. Another story we had to illustrate. That one didn't work so well. I'm going to blow on by it. Sherlock Holmes chasing a guy down through the streets. Another one, another version. Some stuff from kind of Indiana Jones-ish. Just a sinking ship. Another Rain Street. That's a further modification of that first effort. Some pirates. Kind of like the Great White Hunter in Jurassic Park. This was an extrusion exercise. I won't go into what that means, but they're inside a giant cave and there's some light leaking in. This one was the same extrusion thing. There's one profile that repeats zigzags through the whole thing, and it's very easy to do. It's going to be part of a online class eventually, how to do that. Just a perspective exercise. Some World War I airplanes. More. Even more. These are all invented things, so there's no reference material. This is invented. It's kind of semi-futuristic stuff. A little bit of robot action. Some armored figures, an invented craft of my own, tilt rotor of some sort, some more similar science fiction stuff. Corners, just people at corners with bad intent. That was the whole theme. So just seeing what I could do. And I just started with him and just kept adding things to it as I went along. Some girls. Some strange castles, kind of a frosty look to it, even though it's got some warm color in it. Creature development, Dracula, some few things this was an assignment in class that we did. So, castle, very romantic kind of castle. Just an invented piece of hardware, deep space. That's one book. Okay, I got dozens of them, but this This was a large monster approaching a major city, so don't know what that's all about. This was inspired by Expanse on the Sci-Fi Channel. I got really involved in this thing. I just got all wrapped up in it. It's out in the asteroid belt, mining the asteroid belt, and all the stuff that can go wrong once you get out there. More pirates, and a little pirate ship, and more pirates, and the Shadow, the comic book character. Journey to the Center of the Earth, kind of a takeoff on that. I don't know what, something weird on. There's Saturn in the background, so you figure it out. Dragon. Just some street scenes, just having fun with normal stuff. Mermaid, fish, some creatures of various sorts. Sinking ships once again, the Batmobile and the Batman. And this is I built a bunch of models of these things, so I knew them by heart by the time I drew them. So I was able to draw them from memory pretty accurately, but I spent so much time on those things. These were strange places where people might live. So I just got off on a little brief episode there to see where that would take me. Hanging trapeze underneath some scary place. Just self-explanatory. Mech Warrior, my invention, but not that different from anybody else. Giants, that's kind of fairy tale land kind of stuff. I enjoy that too. So, a lot of things other than war. A lot of things. This is all Star Wars stuff that I was fixated on. So it goes on and on. My goodness. That was Luke in Beggar's Canyon with an updated speeder that was a little bit of fun to do. One of the ships from Star Wars briefly seen in one of the episodes or two. More lightsabers. Just playing around. A face in the ruin. That was this thing kind of. I started drawing it. It looked like a face, so I just kind of went with it.
You did the sketchbooking class online for 5 hours, like similar style.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm gonna. That's coming up.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
We're working on the workbook on that one right now. Just some walkers from memory. I got a pretty good memory, which helps out. And this is. I was just kind of influenced. I was watching King Kong one day, the latest, not the latest one, but the one just before the latest one that they're doing right now. And it's that big log across the canyon, which is a classic from the old original that was from the 20s or 30s. But anyway, I just took a spin at it, just having some fun. Skull Island, a little bit more on that. This was a ridiculous example of scale. And what's that?
Yeah, you've got a few minutes, but you're good.
Okay. Just some mysterious character. Soldier, just from memory, just your classic comic book sergeant that I thought was kind of interesting. And it's all these things are invented, so it's a tremendous exercise, but it isn't easy. It's really not easy. A little bit more from the latest Star Wars, or nearly the latest one, the last one. Jakku, again. The speeder. Something I made up. Just a drop ship of some kind and blowing sand and all that good stuff. And the Millennium Falcon, everybody knows that one. So anyway, that's the typical stuff that the sketchbooks consist of. So it's all over the place, the things that I do. There's no pattern to it, just whatever strikes me on a given day. Appreciate you guys sitting through this. Hope something of value came out of it for you. And perhaps see you again someday soon. Okay? Bye-bye for now.